If there's one thing that we must do better is to make sure that the American people understand what is at stake.
Who in your book is a greater threat to American democracy, Elon Musk or Donald Trump?
Donald Trump, without any question. I mean, Elon Musk. Strange. Donald Trump, very, very, very dangerous.
That awful night in October 2022 when he got a knock on the door. You were in Washington, your husband Paul was in San Francisco and he was brutally attacked. Is that the cost of power that you're prepared to pay, to carry on?
If I had known that it would end up with that action, then I would never have proceeded. But we've got to get the job done.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of the American Fourcast. Today we speak to Nancy Pelosi, one of the most consequential figures in American politics in recent history, arguably the most powerful woman ever in American politics. Now, while she's never run for president, she's managed to accumulate and wield a vast amount of power in Washington, D.C. She became the first woman to hold the very influential Speaker of the House position, the third most influential position in America after the president and the vice president. And she's been amongst the top power brokers in the Democratic Party for decades, where an endorsement from her could make or break careers. Well, she's just released a book called The Art of Power, and she joins me now. Madam Speaker, it's wonderful to have you on the program. You write a lot in your book about, the male club of the House of Representatives, an institution that you have served in since 1987, that you adore and cherish, but it was for many years a male club. And here you made history, back in the day when you became the first female speaker, but also you might be about to see history being made with Kamala Harris becoming the first female president of the United States. Now, you saw her in San Francisco. How confident is she that she's going to make history?
Well, I think she's very comfortable. This is a person of great faith. So she's a good person who really is motivated by that goodness to public service and the rest. So personally, a person of faith. Officially very strong and politically very astute. So she knows what the path needs to be to lead us to victory.
Okay.
And she should win because she's the best. That she happens to be a woman of color is icing on the cake, but she should win because she will serve us best.
And what did she say to you yesterday, specifically, to you?
Well, I'm not one to divulge conversations of that private nature, but it was, shall we say, optimistic, determination, decision-oriented to get the job done, to win for the American people. She presented publicly a beautiful difference of two visions for America, which was beautifully received.
Did she also say the words thank you to you specifically?
No. Now, why would she say such a thing?
Because one could argue, I know, and you're both from the San Francisco area and so on, but I wondered if she might have said thank you to you because it is widely seen that you were instrumental in persuading President Biden to step aside.
Well, I won't get into that. In her public remarks, she expressed her gratitude for my leadership in passing the Affordable Care Act and saving the Affordable Care Act, with her commitment to even make it stronger. That was the best thank you of all.
But did you persuade President Biden to step aside?
I'm not going to that. I'm not going to that. Okay. President Biden made his own decision. He has been a consequential president, one of the most in the modern times. Just so remarkable that in the 2 years that we had the majority and the presidency of Biden-Harris, we accomplished great things. 15 million jobs created under his leadership. The other guy has the worst record of job creation since Herbert Hoover. So, the list goes on. And to protect that legacy, he made his decision.
Interesting. Of course, there's a lorry load of legislative achievements in this administration. But the reason why I asked the last question was that it was actually President Biden who name-checked you, Nancy Pelosi, in an interview that he gave at the weekend where he said, if I hadn't stepped aside, and I'm paraphrasing here, I would never have heard the end of it from Nancy Pelosi.
No, I don't know. I didn't hear him say that. He said some of you all would be asking questions about that. I think
But
that's
your
what it
name
was.
did crop
But in
up,
any
though.
event, I have loved him for decades, our whole family, 3 generations of Pelosi's. My husband and I, Paul and I, our children grew up loving him, and our grandchildren. They think Joe Biden, that's the magic word. Those are the magic words because he can get anything done. So that's where I will leave that conversation.
Okay. Because your book is called The Art of Power, and I wonder if one of the arts of power is also knowing when to give it up.
Well, what it is about respect for knowing your why. Why are you there? What is your mission? And that's really relates to when you give it up. As when is your mission accomplished, or your part of that mission accomplished? So it is, in my case, I was so proud of our new leadership that was coming along and the rest, and I was relieved not to have the day-to-day for 20 years being responsible for every word on the floor of the House coming from the Democrats.
You became the first female Speaker of the House of Representatives, before we even had a female president in the United States. And yet, one could have said, well, Nancy Pelosi, why don't you retire now, take it easy? But you're running again for office. And you actually, if I may be so indiscreet,
Well, I had to run again.
2 years older than President Biden.
It was necessary for me to run again because my goal was to make sure that what's-his-name never stepped foot in the White House again. And that was part of my mission for the children. I went from housewife to House member to House Speaker for the children. 1 in 5 in poverty, living in America and going to sleep hungry at night. They were my mission. In the Congress, they were my priority. Their health, their education, the economic security of their families, a safe environment, including safe from gun violence in which they could thrive, a world at peace in which they could reach their fulfillment, and our country could too, with them. So that was my mission. The difference between the visions of the Democrats for the people, addressing their kitchen table issues, and the other side is so vast that I'll have to put out my enjoyment of other things for a while until we get that job done.
And you called him what's his name? You don't want to mention Trump's name, do you? You just don't like pronouncing that name.
I don't like it. I don't like to say his name.
You dislike him that much?
I pray for him. I pray that God will open his heart to receive some of the goodness that is necessary to meet the needs of the children. But I don't talk that much about him. What else did you want to talk about?
Well, talk about a lot of things. I mean, I want to talk about political violence. One of the first chapters in your book, Knock, 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 is about that night, that awful night in October 2022 when you got a knock on the door. You were in Washington. Your husband, Paul, was in San Francisco, and he was brutally attacked. It was a terrible experience for him and obviously for you and your family. First of all, how's he doing?
You're nice to ask. Thank you. He's coming along. He's making progress. More to come. But he is blessed by so much love and good wishes and prayers from people all over the world. But the trauma is still there for our children and our grandchildren because after it happened, as violent as it was, and coming into our own home and into our bedroom and all of that, so awful that what's-his-name would make a joke of it, as did his children, as did a Republican governor and some Republican leadership. So that increased the trauma because it's like, what is that? That cannot be what America is becoming. So the issue of political violence is something that must be, politics is the nonviolent way of disagreement, and they're making it a violent way. It has to stop.
Of course, and of course, what must be so troubling for you is that the assailant was looking for you. He was looking for Nancy Pelosi.
You're right. Yeah, Matt. No, that's imagine the guilt that goes with that. To have this man go into our house, I keep thinking, how did he know to go to the backyard, to pound into the windows? There's some planning involved in it that is suspicious. But nonetheless, he was looking for me, and then he was going to wait. I had just left within the 24 hours before to go to Washington for some classified briefings and this or that were going to happen that Friday morning.
And what must have been so haunting about that experience, amongst many other things, was it happened, a year and a half after the attack on the Capitol Hill, and you were in Capitol Hill on that day, January the 6th, and you saw the mob approaching the Capitol. Yeah. You write very, very, poignantly about that in your book. And again, they were running through the corridors, the rioters, shouting your name, Nancy, Nancy, Nancy. Where's Nancy? We want to find Nancy. It's almost like The Shining, but happening in real life, in the House of Democracy, in the House of the People. Tell us about that day, about January the 6th.
Well, as you just mentioned, the one thing that it had in common with the assault on our house and my husband was the guy came in and was saying, "Where is Nancy? Where is Nancy?" echoing what we had heard on January 6th. January 6th was a horrible day in American history. It was a day where the President of the United States incited an insurrection against the Congress of the United States, against the Constitution of the United States, and in the Capitol of the United States. In terms of that day was not just any day in the Capitol, it was the day, by law, we were required to certify the results of the Electoral College election. And they wanted to come there to prevent that from happening, so preventing Congress from honoring its responsibility for a peaceful transfer of power. They did so with violence, with danger, with disgraceful behavior, with defecation on the floors of the Congress, of the House of defecation, yes, and slurs against the people who maintain the Capitol, for Congress, for our visitors, for the press, covers it, for the children who come and the rest. They were terrible. It was awful. And refusing the then president to send the National Guard, and refusing to send the National Guard, disgraceful, even though in a bipartisan way we were beseeching him to do so. So, and then now he's calling people who are arrested hostages, and he wants to he's going to, whatever it is, pardon them and this or that. He's also said that he would terminate the Constitution of the United States. That should be a reason why somebody does not ever set foot in any Capitol or any White House.
Let me ask you this. President Biden has been very clear just recently, saying he is worried that if Trump were to lose this election, there would not be a peaceful transition of power, that Kamala Harris would not be moving into the White House without trouble on the streets or trouble from Trump. Do you share that fear?
Well, I think we always, they've shown what they are capable of. We would never have suspected that before. We would never have suspected they would come to the Capitol looking for the vice president with a noose, the vice president of their own party with a noose because he was honoring his responsibility, or to come for the speaker to put a bullet in her head using very foul language. So, yeah, we've seen what they're capable of. We've seen what they're capable of. We must be prepared for the worst, hope for the best, and pray that the American people will weigh in a significant way.
Given the stress test to American democracy in recent years, really, and given what's at stake in this election, do you think the American system, as devised by the Founding Fathers more than 200 years ago, is broken?
No, I don't at all. I don't at all. Our founders may have suspected that there could be a rogue president, hence they wrote impeachment into the Constitution. They didn't foresee that it would be a rogue president and a rogue Senate and a rogue Supreme Court, unfortunately. Okay. And so we have to deal with that. And the way to deal with it is to win the election and to win significantly.
And another thing they couldn't foresee, that none of us could foresee until recently, was the power of social media and of someone like Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk has been very controversial in this country in recent weeks because he's kind of meddled with British politics. He's about to interview Donald Trump. Who in your book is a greater threat to American democracy, Elon Musk or Donald Trump?
Donald Trump, without any question. I mean, Elon Musk, strange. Donald Trump, very, very, very dangerous, very dangerous. And you know what's so funny is he says to the fossil fuel industry, give me $1 billion and I'll undo what they've done on climate. When we were doing our last bill under his presidency for the Keep Government Open bill, he said to us, if you put $1 in there for electric vehicles, I will veto the bill. Nothing for EV, nothing for electric vehicles. And now Elon Musk is saying I was going to give him money. I don't know. But anyway, the fact is that I think if there's one thing that we must do better is to make sure that the American people understand what is at stake, that it's different from what was before. We're not running against George Bush, George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush. We're not running against Mitt Romney. We're not running against Bob Dole. We're running against somebody who has completely violated the oath of office that he has taken. This is a very strange situation, undermining everything that our founders put forth, that our men and women fight for, that is good for our children.
Just briefly on the man whose name you won't mention, do you think American democracy could survive another administration by Trump?
I think that our system would be seriously in jeopardy. He said, I'm going to be a dictator from day one. He has said, look what he's done to the Supreme Court. Oh, my God. Such a tragedy for our country. Imagine that the Supreme Court said that a president can do whatever he wants and have total immunity.
Two final brief questions, if I may. In your book, you describe how you went to Kyiv just, I think, 3 months after the beginning of the war by Russia against Ukraine. Then, of course, you went very controversially to Taiwan in 2022. Will you go to Gaza?
I've been to Gaza many times.
Will you go now?
Every time. Well, I go where I'm invited. I was invited to Ukraine. I thought we might die on that trip. It was very dangerous. It was very early. We were under attack going to Taiwan, but I was invited there. But every time I have gone to Israel or to the region, I've always met with the Palestinians and been for a two-state solution. All of those things. In fact, we were fighting so hard for humanitarian assistance for the Palestinians when our friends on the other side of the aisle were saying, we'll give you humanitarian assistance as long as it doesn't go to the Palestinians. That's what we had to deal with. But you never know it. To hear the people on the street going after Joe Biden, I don't know what their agenda was with that. But in any event, I think this, Matt, I think that war has to be considered an obsolete approach to resolving conflict. This is terrible. The collateral damage to non-combatants is so horrible. It's just an uncivilized approach to resolution of conflict. And you think that there would be some sense of recognition that little children should not see their parents killed or be parents seeing their children killed because of a disagreement over how we would proceed for a two-state solution. There should be a two-state solution if there's going to be a democratic Jewish state in the region with all the security. I'm a big supporter of Israel, but I'm also a supporter of the rights of the Palestinian people.
And do you think America should wield more of its considerable power in order to rein in the Israelis at the moment?
Well, I have confidence in Joe Biden. Joe Biden has been remarkable in so many respects. In terms of our global security, in terms of issues that relate to the Middle East, and really the whole world, he has been just top-notch. He knows the Middle East very well. He has been a big supporter of Israel, as we all have. It has been in our national interest to do so, but it's also in our values' interest to do so. And Israel has a right to defend itself. But there has to be some recognition of what has happened to the non-combatants in all of this. Let me just close by saying this. When I was a student, John F. Kennedy became President of the United States, I went to the inauguration as a student, and I heard him say what Americans always quote, and that, to citizens of America, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Okay, that's like everybody knows that. But the next sentence is what I took home with me. To the citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what we can do working together for the freedom of mankind. That message of respect, of collaboration, of cooperation, not condescension. America is going to... No, it's about what we do working together.
And I want to end with a question about you, Nancy Pelosi, Madam Speaker. After January the 6th, and on that day, your daughter, Alexandra, who is a documentary filmmaker herself, was there with her son, witnessing what you were witnessing. And then after the attack on your husband, she said to you, you've got to quit everything, Mum. You've got to get out of politics, get out of Congress. You know, got to stop this, I guess, to protect yourself and your family. And you've carried on despite that. Is that the cost of power that you're prepared to pay, to carry on under these circumstances?
I have to have, I'm very solution-oriented. And what she was saying, actually, in the fuller context, was that when she was 16 years old, I asked for her permission for me to run for Congress because I have 5 children. We have 5 children. 4 of them were already in college. She was only going to be a senior in high school, young for senior year, but nonetheless. So I said, Mommy has been asked to run for Congress. I don't know if I'll win, but I wouldn't even consider it if you didn't think it would be okay. And I went on to say that Mommy would be gone 3 nights a week when Congress was in session. She responded by saying, Mother, not Mommy, Mother, get a life. I had never heard that expression. That became a common lingo, but no, I hadn't heard it. That was first. Get a life. What teenage girl wouldn't want her mother out of the house 3 nights a week? So she was hearkening back to that, saying if I had known that this would end up with a hammer on Dad's head, I would never have agreed to your going forward. And if I had known that it would end up with that action, then I would never have proceeded. But we've got to get the job done, and the best way to do that is to make sure we have a political solution. We make sure that we win this election. And I'm stronger to do that where I am.
Nancy Pelosi, thank you very much indeed. Well, that's it for the American Forecast for this week, but we will be back. Rest assured, goodbye.